just for everyone's information on that front. Are there bill introductions today? Any bill introductions? Seeing none. Committee, I am excited about this presentation. We've talked a lot about tools that can help us in our work to identify fraud, waste, and abuse in our government agencies. And we've talked a lot about, could AI be a possible tool that would help us? And so today we have a presentation on Celonis AI and government efficiency. We have Jerry Dreisen and Tim Kutz and Mark Fellows here to present. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome to committee.
How about now? All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the public. Excited to be here as well. I am Jerry Dreesen. I am a strategic advisor for state and local government practice at Celonis. And I'm joined by our Director of State and Local Government, Mark Fellows, and Tim Kutz, who is a value engineer, which is a fancy title for, he actually works with a lot of our state and local government clients that have implemented our software. So a little bit about Celonis. We are a software company. We have been working with the world's largest companies for quite some time. So if you think about Exxon, BP, Kimberly-Clark, household names, pretty much any household name you can think of that's a large corporation, there's a good chance that they have used Celonis to drive efficiency in their operations. What we actually do, we are a process intelligence platform, and what that means is we focus on the core operations of those companies to drive efficiency. A few years ago, I think 5 years ago, we started using that same logic that was successful in the private sector and applying it to government. So we have many states that are working with us on a wide array of issues, including public benefits administration, and also on procurement reform and also just overall cost efficiency measures. We're also working with the federal government, the Department of Defense, and the U.S. Navy, to name a few. So we are gaining traction in the public sector based on momentum that we've built in the private sector working with very large corporations. So the one thing that we've actually been talking to a few both agencies and with the Inspector General's office about a few opportunities we see in Kansas. Overall, we do think that we can help with efficiencies across the board. Had a great deal of success, which Mark will talk about in the state of Oklahoma with procurement reform. Tens of millions of dollars in savings have been achieved there. He'll talk about that a little bit. Most of our latest work, though, with the Inspector General and the discussions we've had have really been around two things. Helping drive efficiency by taking a x-ray of all the processes that go on that kind of can't be seen across the various systems that are used for public benefits, so SNAP, TANF, Medicaid, and actually showing where those process inconsistencies happen. And in those process inconsistencies and variations, that's where we see fraud, that's where we see waste. That's also where we see payment error rates occur. We'll talk a little bit about that. So been having conversations about how we can also help with the $41 million potential cost shift that could occur to the state of Kansas related to the payment error rate. But mostly our conversations have been with the Inspector General on expediting and creating efficiency and transparency around audits and investigations. Any questions? I'm going to ask Mark to come up now and talk about some of our success in other states.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Dreesen? Seeing none.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I see we'd actually go, I'm not sure who's controlling the slides. Are you controlling? If you want to go to where you see the state of Oklahoma up here, I will address. There you go. Thank you. I joined Salonis several years ago to start our public sector practice, and I'm the managing director for our state and local government practice, and I cover all 50 states where we have accounts. I was intrigued of coming to Salonis. I was working at Microsoft. I started my career working in public sector and local government, went to work as a consultant, ultimately ended up in Oracle and then Microsoft. I came here because of the opportunity to improve government. My whole career has been spent in government technology in many different types of programs, from licensing, permitting, tax and revenue, financial back offices, et cetera. And would like to just highlight a few key stories. There are many use cases for Salonis. We were government efficiency before Doge was ever even a word. And we started down that route mostly because so much in public sector, from system implementation, our new systems, the as is to the to be, the opportunity for business process reengineering was just failing. Most system implementations went from as is, just new technology, but no better processes. Salonis, having already worked 12 years in the private sector, as Jerry had mentioned, improving corporate efficiencies for the bottom line for better profit, we saw the opportunity to bring that to government. Not for profit, not to improve the bottom line, but to improve service delivery, to improve back office operations, and ultimately to solve some of the key problems that are plaguing government. You cannot hire enough people to do the work, and the demands of government are only increasing, they are not decreasing. So with this, we were brought in to Oklahoma 4 years ago now, underneath the Governor Stitt administration, to solve a procurement problem. They had billions of untracked funds that were spent during the COVID era. They were required by the Legislative Office of Financial Transparency, which was a legislative audit branch committee, to audit all of their 122 agencies, seemingly an impossible task. They went to their partner, their audit partner, E&Y, and they had a $14 million RFP response from them to do this audit. The CIO saw the opportunity and had heard of Salonis, and we had been talking to him and brought us in, and we were able to do that full audit within months. And that is the power of Salonis, the power of machine learning, the power of AI, is that it doesn't replace systems and applications, but it makes them more efficient. Today, with that power, we, in real-time audit all 122 agencies. We've saved millions of dollars, currently not only in hard costs of people, of auditors and things of that nature that would be used to do audits, but we found over $41 million in contract spend that was off contract that could have been saved if they were using statewide contracts and taking advantage of that spend. That is one great use case in Oklahoma. Another one that is more to the lines of what we've been talking to the state of Kansas about is around this SNAP processing. States have integrated eligibility systems, as do you, and in that there is a key metric, or there was a key metric called APT, Application Processing Time. HR 1 has changed that. The big, beautiful bill has made everyone very nervous about payback to the federal government due to payment error rates. If your payment error rate is above 6%, then you're going to have to pay back a portion of the federal grant money for these social service programs to the federal government. If it goes higher than 6, above 8% or above 10%, it even increases more. Also, we are in the world right now where fraud, waste, and abuse has become very prevalent and exposed, I guess, if you will, in some states. State of Georgia had brought us in pre-HR 1 to address APT rate. That has led to process intelligence, and what we've learned through that is we are auditing eligibility benefits before they are paid. We were doing this even before HR 1 was introduced as the big beautiful bill in the federal government when payment error rate became a requirement for all state governments. So those are just two examples where government has used Celonis to get more efficient. We have many more, not only on system transformation and improving the government outcomes through new applications that are being built, but also in the social service space, in procurement, and to prevent things like overpayment, duplicate payment, whether it's procurement or whether it's in a social service program. Any questions about any that I can answer for you?
We have a question from Senator Murphy.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. We're looking at our error rate pretty serious. Do you have an idea on Georgia, how much you reduced their error rate?
Yeah, I don't have that exact number, to be honest with you. Just because this is just so new, but we've reduced their application processing time and their error rate below the standard 6%.
Okay, very good.
Seeing no other questions, please proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. As Jerry introduced me earlier, my name is Tim Kutz. I'm a value engineer with Celonis. I've been with Celonis for about 5 years, one of the beginning members when we really started Celonis in the North America market. I've had the opportunity to work with both our commercial and our public sector. I've also had the opportunity to work internationally with some of our longest tenured customers back in Germany. And I think the part that I'm most excited about is working with our public sector. As you see on the screen, because of the fact that there is so much public assistance programs that has challenges, and how can we actually improve that and leverage our taxpayer dollars in the best way. As we really start to think about what are the challenges that are being presented within government technology and how can we actually address this, thinking about fraud, waste, and abuse and public assistance, there's a few big things that come up. Number one, eligibility rules are complex, they're ever-changing, and they really vary across all of the different programs. As Mark had mentioned, there's integrated eligibility. However, when you think about the different programs within that eligibility, there's different ways of addressing that, there's different ways of thinking about it, and there's different processes and systems that are a part of that. And that leads into our next problem of there's a lot of disparate systems, there's a lot of disconnected systems, and these are always, again, ever-changing. AI is new to the world. Systems and processes are always ever growing. And so how can you have technology that is going to actually take all of this information and process it appropriately? It's nearly impossible to have that full end-to-end view or end-to-end insight around what is going on across all of these different systems. And that's where you really start to have things that drop off. That's where you start to have issues that occur, and you may not know it as it's going on, but you know it down the road, and you need to be able to fix that in real time and effectively. You also have frequent policy changes. States are always changing their rule. The federal government is always going ahead and making improvements, working towards making improvements and making sure that the rules are being enforced. Mark brought up HR 1 and the big beautiful bill. And so by being able to think about all of these ever-going changes, you need to be able to be nimble and agile, being able to think about how can we go ahead and meet these rules? How can you work through some of these changes, as Mark had mentioned, and be able to actually bring down those error rates into an appropriate level. Make sure that you are limiting fraud, waste, and abuse within the state. And so one of the biggest problems that we also see with this is, yes, there's technology. Yes, there's always changes. But at the end of the day, you need people to actually ensure that they're doing things correctly. States anymore are having limited resources. There's such a constraint going on. And so how can you actually leverage the resources that you have and partner that with technology? Partner your resources and your people with AI and make sure that you are doing things in the most effective manner and making sure that you're going through and actually taking the systems that you have, taking the technology that you have, taking the processes and the goals that you have, and ensuring that this is effective for the citizens and for the public. If we move into, I'm not sure if it's going to be on these slides, moving into a paper demo, not that necessarily. There's an addendum slide deck that was shared. I don't know if you all have it, where it's titled the first slide would be the demo. The second slide is a real-time oversight, the Command Center for Risk Management. Moving away from technology, and actually, exactly, technology on paper is what we love. And so what we really want to speak to here and what we really want to start with as you go into a demo or as you would log into our software, we want to just highlight a few of the capabilities and really speak to how it's going to be able to benefit the state. The first thing that we'll see is if you go to the next slide is what we call our control center. What this really is for the state is a command center for risk management. One of the biggest challenges that I had mentioned is the fact that in integrated eligibility, you have so many different areas. You may have a citizen that is in one of these areas. You may have a citizen, and oftentimes they're being applied to multiple different areas of benefit. And so it's important to be able to track this, be able to manage this oversight, and be able to understand how is the performance of the state. Are we delivering benefits within SNAP effectively? But also making sure that you're also giving TANF benefits efficiently, as well as Medicaid, and looking at that across the board. It's important to be able to make sure that you're looking at, if we see under SNAP, the average processing time reduced to what you need that to be, to make sure that you're giving the citizens and giving the public benefits in a timely manner, and you're serving the public that needs to be served. But in addition to that, if you look to that metric, just one to the right, the payment error rate, making sure that you're serving the citizens that need to be served. And so being able to do that in an effective way is going to be extremely important in making sure that your integrated eligibility and your public assistance is being effectively managed. This can be seen at the top level, and being able to have this oversight allows you to know exactly where you are sitting as a state and where the adjustments need to be made. Is it an individual benefit? Is it the integrated eligibility platform as a whole? And is there specific areas that you want to actually go ahead and go for improvement? I'm going to take a pause between each of these slides as we would work through the demo to see if there's any questions on an individual screen, an individual capability as we work through.
Seeing no questions.
Awesome. So if we go into the next slide of radical transparency, mapping the actual path of state funds, this is really where the foundation of Celonis came from. What you are seeing here is the traditional Celonis Process Explorer. To take a step in a little bit into the weeds of what you're seeing, what Celonis does is connects into those back-end disparate systems and gives you a real-time image of how your state funds are actually being processed. Gone are the days of sticky notes on whiteboards, thinking about how might we be doing things or how should we be doing things. Celonis is going to give you an actual, transparent, and objective viewpoint of what you are actually doing, utilizing the data that is within the systems. And so what you're able to start to see is the process flows of how state funds are being processed within these different process areas. So when we think about integrated eligibility and program benefits, we can see two different process flows, one being a caseworker and one being an applicant. Traditionally, we would think of these as two siloed processes, but with Celonis, we can see the marriage point and we can start to see what is actually going on. In fact, one of the states that we're working with, we were able to see 700,000 different process flows across their systems. So they were not able to process program benefits in one way, not in 100 ways, but across the state, 700,000 different pathways they were able to see. And that was coming in mere minutes or hours, not in months or years. And so what we're able to see here within the process flow is a standard process, starting with a caseworker where they're able to be assigned to a project. Immediately we see a very common deviation, caseworkers being reassigned. There's a lot of applications coming in. Again, we have limited resources, and so we may see somebody that is a junior caseworker that just naturally gets assigned to a case. This could be one of the most complex integrated eligibility cases that this caseworker, frankly, doesn't have the capacity to actually do. And so when we see that reassignment, we are already thinking about delays, where that caseworker now has to update the new caseworker. There has to be an entirely new investigation into that assignment, and there's a lot of back work that goes in. So it's already extremely inefficient and maybe some missteps along the way. But if we continue to work down this process flow, we now see the alignment with the applicant. After they submitted their application, They're able to go through and actually have that checklist or verification checklist initiated, and then actually have that interview scheduled. The next deviation that we have highlighted is one of the biggest ones that we have seen and one of the biggest dangers to the state. No-show interviews. If we see a no-show interview, they should immediately end a process. They should immediately stop that process flow from going forward. But one of the things that we've been able to see within some of the other states is the fact that benefits are still administered after a no-show interview. And this is a clear area of fraud, waste, and abuse, where you don't have all of the necessary information and interviews are not being taken, yet benefits are still being processed. I will once again take a pause before we walk through how do we actually identify this further, and how do we solve this problem from continuing in the future?
I think you're good. Keep going.
Amazing. So if we now look at safeguarding public funds, what we are able to do within Salonis is actually identify some of these different areas of payment errors. And so what we're able to go through is, again, see at a high level, how is this continuously performing? Where are there areas for improvement? But on the right side, what we're able to see more clearly is root cause detection. In real time, Salonis will be able to see all of the applications and what the cause of their payment fraud was. This could be, once again, caseworker misalignment, where you don't have the right people processing the cases, there were a lot of reassignments, or there was somebody that was not tenured enough to actually process a case. Again, we can start to see failed to follow up. This could be coming from a no-show interview, or we could be seeing an improper budget. And so what we're able to do with this information is start to think through, now that we have this information, where are there opportunities for artificial intelligence? Not buying artificial intelligence or deploying artificial intelligence just for the sake of doing it because it's the buzzword, it's the trend, but actually being strategic about it. Thinking about this in a way that's going to benefit the citizens and benefit the state. What we want to do with this, and I actually will just go forward one more slide, is to actually proactively prevent this fraud, waste, and abuse. We can have an operational toolkit for all of your caseworkers, where they have an open list of all applications and all of the details within it. Again, there's a lot of disparate systems that go across integrated eligibility. Instead of having to log into 3, 4, 5, maybe more systems in order to process an application, Salonis is able to go through, connect into all of these systems, and give you a single pane of glass view of everything that is going on. And so what we're able to do is, now that we have identified the root causes, we can categorize applications in real time if they are falling into an area of fraud, waste, and abuse. If there is a no-show interview, an application will be flagged and it will be brought to the attention of a caseworker. If there is a caseworker reassignment, all of the previous details within that case are going to go to that new caseworker. So it's going to expedite that time to actually get them enabled and make sure that you're able to process these things correctly. If there is the ability, or if somebody tries to process or administer benefits when there was not an interview or when there were other areas of identified fraud, the system can actually put a stop to that and alert the individuals that are at a higher level and say this is a fraud case and that this is not supposed to be processed. So with Salonis, you're able to really go through and allow the system, or have the system allow people to best know how to process cases, best know where there are areas of fraud, waste, and abuse, and ensure that state funds are being utilized in the best way possible. From the demo standpoint, I will, if there's any questions, happy to answer those. Otherwise, I'll pass it back to Jerry.
Any questions from the committee? We do have a question. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm excited for you guys to be here because we've been in this committee for over a year now, and I was excited to join it, but unfortunately, I don't think we've found any efficiencies. I know we haven't saved any money yet, and I'm hoping that whether it's you or the other government contractors that came to brief us earlier, that we can help find them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, you're back up, Mr. Dreesen.
I will just add a couple things. That was a great presentation from Tim. I just want to make sure we point out a couple things. One is that demo that you showed is actually hitting 100% of all of your applications. So when you look at payment error rate and how it's calculated today, it's usually done on a sampling. So they'll take 800 cases. This actually gives you a view over all of them. So you can, with 100% certainty, see exactly what's happening in all the cases. So the other thing is, because it's happening in real time, you can actually give the power back to supervisors to say, one thing that Tim didn't mention is we can also put at-risk factors in, like documents that are required for eligibility determination, like a W-2 or like an asset attestation form. If they're not uploaded, then that'll flag that case and say, that eligibility is being processed without the appropriate documentation. So you can actually stop some of those potential cases where eligibility is being processed without all the requirements being met. So just a couple things to add on to what Tim showed. So I think at that point we have presented an overview of what we have to offer, and we stand for any questions.
What questions do we have? Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you guys talk to us a little bit about, your data governance structure, what happens with accessibility or lack of accessibility to the data to systems outside of the state systems, and maybe how you structured that with Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'm actually going to tee that up for Tim to talk about that. We do have a lot of experience. I'll just add in before he gets in, because that's why I started with some of the largest corporations in the world, because I think a lot of times, because of the complexity of government, we think that the data challenges are hard to deal with. They're also hard in Exxon. They're also hard in, so we have a lot of experience since the company was started really dealing with that exact thing. But I'll let Tim talk exactly to that.
Thank you. So to speak to our data governance, one of the biggest things is we have all of the necessary requirements that you could think of from any government and or commercial institution. So from a technical side, that would be SOC 2, Type 2. When it comes to how do we actually leverage our back-end systems and how does that work, we are a cloud solution. We have the option for multi-tenancy. So this could be a shared tenancy. Obviously with that, the state's data would be in its own tenancy, and it is only accessible by those individuals that have the correct access to it. We also do have single tenancy if that is an option that the state would like to go with. From an individual person by person basis, we do have role-based securities, and so with that, individuals are restricted to the data that they are permitted to see. So we have different groupings. We can narrow that down by specific viewpoints, or those different slides or different views. So you can have it narrowed there. You can have it narrowed down so that you have one piece of access that somebody else may not have based off of a data point. In addition to that, when we actually bring that data in, oftentimes what we have is, it's called a staging server, and that staging server is run, owned, and operated by the state. And so with that, it actually sits within your back-end systems, and that's where all data is actually being transformed. So that data is still sitting in state environments, and it's just a copy of that is being sent over. And so when it is a copy data, it actually does not affect anything within your back-end systems. In addition to that, we also have the ability to pseudonymize, other people know it as anonymize or hashing data. We can do that at the highest levels, so that's SHA 256. And what we're able to do with that is make sure that any PII or any data, in fact, is being brought in, is being hashed, and made sure that you can only see what you want to see. And finally, you own the data. This is your data. This is something that Celonis stands on very, very, very firmly, is the fact that your data is your data. And so you get to pick what data actually goes into the system itself. We can go through and you can select or deselect entire tables. You can select or deselect individual columns or pieces of data and filter out specific pieces of data within those data structures. So at the end of the day, we have a lot of different back-end systems in place to ensure that data is being very secure. The data that you're seeing is data you want to see. data access is provisioned by you and owned and operated by you, and making sure that at the end of the day, everything is extremely securely hosted.
Without divulging anything that would be confidential or proprietary, for your contracts, as you know, when you're contracting with a private entity and a corporation, you know, you're contracting with that entity. Obviously, at the state level, there could be agency level contracts, state level contracts. What do those contracts generally look like, and what's your monetization and your contract structures? Is it like a base subscription rate per annum? Is it, you know, we estimate, you know, savings through the use of the program, or we take a percentage of what we think we saved the state? What do those contracts look like?
Thank you. Since I deal with all of our government contracts, I guess they're making me talk. But typically a state has its state contracting vehicle, or they're using a shared contract like a NASPO, a National Association of State Purchasing Officers contract vehicle, or GSA. We meet those terms that are in both the NASPO and with the GSA. Typically then a state entity has additional riders to the contract, or participating addendums is the actual word that they use. And then we will go through and review those terms and conditions if they are state specific, and make sure there are no issues with them. We've been doing work with, like I said, the DOD, Navy, Air Force, Defense Logistics Agency, and also some of the largest state governments and most complicated governments. So we've come to those terms and conditions. Within that, there's always what we call InfoSec, information security, terms and conditions that we have to adhere to. We are FedRAMP compliant. If that is a requirement, we can also operate in commercial clouds, and we can also operate on premise if that is a requirement to security concerns. On the licensing, thank you. On the licensing, you typically license by process and then by budget of the program that is using us. So if you were to license, for example, SNAP, we would look at the federal budget or the dollars coming in for SNAP. We have an algorithm that looks at, you know, which is really just claims processing or, you know, case processing, and that becomes the base price. Our GSA price is no more than $500,000 per process, so it's never going to exceed that per process. And then we dial down based upon size of government. For example, you know, the Department of Defense being very large, or state of California being very large, much larger than Kansas, your pricing would come down accordingly. And that's a one-year subscription that would be renewed annually if that was required to or desired to be used annually for audit or process efficiency capabilities. And then there are additional AI add-ons and other things that can be used that are either co-developed with partners or developed by Celonis.
May I ask one more, Madam Chair? And do you guys ever enter into performance-based contracting?
We have done a few of those, yes, which are interesting, and I've seen those throughout my career. And yeah, we can come to terms on a performance-based contract if it's mutually beneficial. Thank you.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. One question that we always ask is what's the return on investment? And how do you measure success with what you find?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and all of our customers have a different desire for success. It's very easy in the commercial world to just look at return on investment. There's hard to say what the return on investment in public sector is. We mentioned earlier that Tim is a value engineer, and the reason why we use value is he's assigned to customers to derive value. So whether that is a value of how are we doing more work with less resources, that could be one way of defining value. How are we increasing, or how are we finding value in stopping payment error rate or overpayment in procurement, or defining value for using statewide contracts that are not being used so that we can now get greater discount. We are tracking that value. We do a quarterly business review with every customer to make sure we are aligned with those metrics that particular organization, whether it be a state government or city government, would like. For example, the value could be simply we want to process professional licenses faster. Right now, it's taking 37 days to process a professional license. We want to get down to 24. What does that mean for putting more people to work in your community because they now have a professional license to go work? So the defining of the value is really specific in government, and it's not just an ROI.
Senator Murphy.
Well, thank you, Chair. I don't really have a question. I just kind of a comment. I guess when you like look at return on investment kind of a thing, you know, maybe we'd save a couple $1 million on SNAP, but if it kept us from having to pay a $41 million penalty, then all of a sudden it jumps way up. And I think we also have a tendency to forget that when we look at federal dollars, we think that's federal dollars, we have state dollars is all that matters, but federal dollars are our tax dollars too. So no matter where we save it, we're saving the taxpayers. And I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and efficiency is not a, you know, it's not a part, it's for everyone. Anything else?
Yes, so to Senator Schmidt's point, as far as timeline, say that we issue an RFP, Salonis is awarded the RFP. How long does it take to typically get your system implemented so we can start seeing the red flags and the benefits of what you've offered?
Question. Typically, you think of an IT project in state government lasting multiple years, right? That's been my experience too, but not here at Salonis. The actual timelines are very quick. We're not replacing an application. We are ingesting data. The AI and the machine learning is doing the rest for us. And so the timeline is really how long does it take to ingest the data and get data access? Once we have data access, we are live in full production. In Oklahoma, within 2 months. State of Georgia, more complicated use case, a more complicated custom application. We are live in four months. So that is the timelines that are we see both in commercial and public sector.
That's very interesting and very good to hear, because you are correct. When we do anything with IT, it is years of, you know, shutting down one system, implementing another, and so we don't really reap the benefit. And so it's good to hear that could be a really quick turnaround on that. Committee, any other questions? Anything else you would like to share with the committee? Yes, Mr. Dreesen.
I do. One of the things that Salonis does very well also is, back to Senator Alley's point about ROI, is we publish customer success stories. You will find them on our internet. If you Google Salonis in Oklahoma, you'll see some very powerful use cases. But back to Mark's point of ROI can be tricky because there's hard dollar savings and then there's soft, like if we hired staff or didn't hire staff, you know, how do you start to measure some of that? The numbers are pretty staggering for their investment. You'll see $10 million savings, hard savings, and $40 million of soft savings, total savings. And so Salonis is pretty transparent about what did we set out as a target to achieve and how did we achieve that. In fact, that's how every engagement starts with us, is what is the tipping point that we're trying to turn, right? What is the pain point of the customer? And that's how we determine which process to actually go after and fix. And ROI is very much part of our focus. We want value to be delivered to you because that's how we grow as a company. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Comments? Seeing none, thank you so very much for being here and sharing this. We've been hearing a lot about it, and it was good to have you in the room and get a firsthand look at it, so thank you very much. Committee, just a couple of very quick reminders on our fast-paced calendar we have here. Monday, February 2nd is the last day for non-exempt committees to request bill drafts. So that is rapidly approaching, so just be aware of the deadlines if you have something you want to submit. We will be meeting tomorrow. So Seeing no other business,